All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Dave Knows Wrestling podcast. I am your host, as always, the one, the only, David Lee. And finally, welcome back to the show, the one, the only, the amazing Albert Albanese.
Thanks for having me back. Should I raise an eyebrow?
Go. I think you can.
There
and
we
you can. All right. So it's been a while since you've been on the show. Very glad to have you on.
I'm psyched to be back, man.
All right. Excellent. So, and not only are you back, but we have a big topic for you guys that we were just talking about. And when it comes to me and Albert, the weird thing is we agree on so much, but when we disagree hard.
You know, it's always fun to disagree hard.
Yep. So, and somehow we never run out of these things. We just have to probe a little bit, and the topic will come up.
It didn't take long this time.
No, it didn't.
About and 45 seconds of prep work.
That's how we roll. That's,
Damn straight.
Now, it's a New York minute. That's how we move. We move fast around here.
This is what you get from being around here.
And also, I will be sweating profusely because it's very hot in the studio.
Yeah, it's 100 degrees here. I'm about to strip, but you lose viewers.
I was gonna say, and I'm not wearing anything I could get away with wearing underneath this, or else I would take this off.
Yeah, plain white t-shirt doesn't work for me either.
Yeah. So okay. So here's the thing. Now this is somewhat recently. At least I learned about it recently. Is that the Honky Tonk Man has made some statements about who is the highest money draw in his wrestling history. And I've also said it on my show in several episodes who I think is the biggest money draw in history. And it seems like the Honky Tonk Man and you disagree with me. Now, who do you say is the... Now, I have said in my favorite wrestlers episode, and I said in another episode, that I think Stone Cold Steve Austin is the biggest money draw in history. And you say...
It's the immortal Hulk Hogan.
Now, what's interesting about this is Stone Cold Steve Austin is my favorite wrestler. I just gave the ending of that episode away, so there you go. But
spoiler alert.
But how do you feel about Hulk Hogan?
I absolutely despise Hulk Hogan.
Which is the interesting thing. You are not a Hogan guy, but yet you
Never
think it's
been.
Hogan.
Yeah.
All right, so I think I'll give you the floor first. Tell me why you believe Hulk Hogan is the top money draw in wrestling history.
So I think, Vince knew he had to make a global expansion. San Martino was on his way out. He dropped the title to Iron Sheik. He had to put the belt on somebody who looks like he had enough presence to be this big guy to carry this new venture. The WWE was now going to be global, and they were going to take over the wrestling industry. They were going to, be the biggest thing in the world. And who do you put all that momentum behind but Hulk Hogan? From the second Hogan came out, this guy was on Saturday Night Live. He was guest starring on TV shows, doing movies, and he raised the brand of the WWE. Now, I always subscribe to the fact that Hogan is a Vince McMahon creation, and Vince McMahon could have possibly put just about anybody else in that role, and they could have been just as successful, but Hogan happened to be the guy that was there. I don't think that you get to where you got during the Attitude Era without Hogan being there first to lay that groundwork. Hogan left, the WWE went through a harsh downturn, and it wasn't until Austin did come back and, make a resurgence for the WWE that we saw, those numbers take back off again like they were with Hogan. Of course, I admit they did far surpass that, but I also think that it's just a different time period. More people had televisions, more people had access to cable networks, and, pay-per-views, all that kind of stuff was a little bit more accessible. But I just think Hogan laid the groundwork, and I just hate talking good about Hogan. This is going to be such a bittersweet episode for me.
Okay, you definitely brought up a lot of good points, and let's get more into that in a little bit. But as you brought up, the numbers, by far, favor Austin.
100%. I don't deny that.
So, for me, that right there. But I hear your arguments, and that's the thing. Well, you think a lot of people are going to say, just look at the pure numbers. Just look at the books, and that determines things. Well, if you just do that, then yes, Austin is the biggest money drawer. There's no question about it. However, you brought up a lot of good points to dissect and refute that. This is arguable. This is, as much as it sounds like it's pure math and you can't deny math, there is wiggle room. Now, the number one thing that you bring up is inflation.
Absolutely.
Right, and the thing is, but you can adjust inflation. You can figure out the adjustments for it. And even in that case, even if you adjust for inflation, Austin still has the edge. But there's some other, at least that if I remember correctly, Austin still has an advantage. But now here's where the fun part is that and so as much as you hate talking good about Hogan, I might be able to get you out of there.
No, I'll do it. It's okay.
And I do disagree with you about Hogan could have been anybody. I really don't think that's true.
I think it could have happened with Macho Man.
But see, here's the thing. You look at the Ultimate Warrior, and it didn't take.
Yeah, but I mean, I have my own hangups about the Warrior too.
I do too.
I don't think he was as committed. Hogan was committed. You know, I do have again. I'm going to talk positive. I'm just going to get it out of the way. I haven't talked positive about Hogan and go against all my morals in this episode. But Hogan,
I'm going to get you, brother.
Oh no, you probably will because it's not hard. Hogan, like in my opinion, Hogan, lived that role. He wanted to be, another
Is
guy
that like John Cena?
Yes, 100%. It's the John Cena thing. Who is another person you can actually argue for as being one of the top money draws there too. I mean, I think those are your top three guys. But
I say The Rock too.
I think The Rock is up there. I think that longevity wise, I think that's where it hurts The Rock a little bit.
Well, I mean, there's a couple of numbers I do want to throw out. Now, see, here's the thing: The Rock, you can make the argument for. He's like in the top 5, but he's definitely not in the conversation as Ric Flair. I want him to be higher, but I don't think he is.
Here's my thing about The Rock, though. How skewed are those numbers, being that they're taking place at the same time as Austin? And that's my big thing about The Rock.
Okay, well, here's the thing. Okay, let's go into this. Okay, that's going to be a beautiful segue to one of the factors I want to talk about. Now, you talked about the global expansion, the fact that Austin couldn't do what Austin did, according to you. I don't necessarily agree with this, but Austin couldn't do what he did if Hogan didn't lay the groundwork. Now, with that being said, if we look, yes, Austin did have more. He did have more exposure. He was capable of being seen on a more natural level, where the first WrestleMania wasn't even a pay-per-view; it was closed circuit TV.
Right.
So Austin had certain advantages like that, which is why some people debate this as saying that Austin had access to things. What you're saying, but. If we just look at these numbers and you want to talk about Austin and The Rock, it's really not Austin and The Rock that you have to look at the numbers for. It's really The Rock and Cena, because The Rock and Cena is the highest grossing pay-per-view of all time. It's got the most buys. I'm sorry, The Rock and Cena is the highest buys.
That's crazy.
And with the network, that's never going to be topped, at least as long as they have the network, because people just have the network now.
Yeah, it's true.
Pay-per-view buys, it's always going to be The Rock and Cena.
Was that WrestleMania 29? Or was it 30?
See, I think the last two are the two highest ones. If I remember correctly, it's one of them is the highest grossing one. I think it's the later one. It could be the one before, but I'm pretty sure it's the later one. I don't remember it off the top of my head. But,
which is crazy because you went to 29, right?
No, I wanted to. But
okay, so I did, and that was quite frankly one of the worst WrestleManias ever, and I was there live.
I was at the worst main event ever, and that was Roman Reigns and Triple H.
Yeah. Well, you got the worst main event. I think I might have gotten a worse show.
Punk and Taker was good.
Yes, that's it.
All right. Well.
And the Shield's debut at WrestleMania. Yeah. Other than that, I'm really God.
Fair enough.
Terrible show. Ziggler should have cashed in that night. I would have been so much happier.
The night after was the night to go.
I should have won that night.
But anyway, so going back to it, yeah. So if I am correct, if I recall correctly, the 29 with Rock and Cena in the main event is the highest buy rate of pay-per-view. So like I said, you don't really look at, and buy rates, unlike paper, and also if my memory serves correctly, it's through buy rates, not money. So inflation doesn't matter. It's just pure. Now, yeah, you can go again to how much more it's accessible to people.
Right.
Pay-per-view being more global or whatever. But either way, that both. It seems that both Rock and Austin's main events at WrestleMania don't equal Cena and Rock's. So if anything, just on pay-per-view, just on this pay-per-view factor, you might have to throw them into the equation.
Fair enough, but I also, if you want to, I keep doing this. I have to do this. If you want to keep going back to that, the highest attended WrestleMania is it still WrestleMania 3? Is it not? Pontiac Silverdome, Andre the Giant, Hulk Hogan. I mean, if you really want to go with buy rates and stuff like that, sure. But I mean, highest attendance ever. Hogan still got everybody there.
Yeah, he got everyone there. But here's I'll give you that. But those numbers are fudged. We know that they are.
All those numbers are fudged.
So that's the thing.
All of them.
But But the buy rate numbers, I think, come from pay-per-view. It's pay-per-view providers themselves. I don't think.
I agree. I don't think that's anything WWE can make up. I think that's that might be. I don't know if that's Nielsen or whatever. Well, it's comparable, I guess, to whatever the Nielsen rating would be for television.
Yeah. I'm just saying. I rely
those are the
on
numbers that they have.
Yeah, I rely on the amount of buys the pay-per-view has as a statistic more so than other things. But even so, even if they still have and I thought they beat that record.
They might have.
Didn't they do it recently though?
Maybe. I mean, it was 90. It's hard. Was there anything? Maybe it must have been.
I feel like the one I was at might have beaten that.
Might have. It might have been. That might have been it.
I don't remember, but anyway.
Close enough, though. But even still, if that's the case, none of the guys that we're talking about were
Right. I'll give you that. It's all
relevant to that.
I'll give you that. It's Austin. And Hogan. If we're talking about the two of them, we got to look at Hogan's thing. But I think when you look at ticket sales as a whole, maybe not any one shot. I think Austin has Hogan beat on that too.
He might, and I think Cena actually might be getting close to having him beat too. But just that's a pure longevity factor.
But and it's also the fact that they're selling the bigger arenas now. They're doing
Absolutely.
So that's.
I mean, every WrestleMania is now in a football stadium or a baseball stadium or some soccer stadium or the biggest stadium you can possibly find.
And so now these are the factors that make things debatable and why people actually argue, because these hard numbers are hard to find, and I'm not even sure that people have them out there. And so Cena does get into the equation more, but the reason why no one ever talks about Cena is because I think we can see that despite how you feel, and we talked about what we think about Cena before,
right.
And despite what you look at it, he has very, very much divided the audience, and ratings under Cena's watch have gone down.
Of course they have. I mean, you can't. That's not something you deny. But I mean, I think that they were set so high during the Attitude Era, there was nowhere else they can go but lower.
But that's exactly my point of why I discount Cena. So Cena's down because of ratings. So even though he has pay-per-view buys, to the best of my recollection, I disqualify him simply because of TV ratings.
I mean, and we understand. I mean, look, we're talking 1 and 2. I think me and you were arguing what's really 1 and 2. It's either Austin or it's Hogan.
Right.
I mean, Cena, Rock, Flair. I think those are probably the other guys in the top 5. But
yeah,
it's either. I mean, it depends on what you subscribe to as, and how you want to look at things. I mean, for me. Sure, I mean Hogan's WWE run was huge, but even still, look at what he brought to WCW as well. The NWO run, he also enhanced that brand from being, what was at one point the number 2 brand to being for 52 straight weeks or whatever it was, or maybe even longer. The WCW was the number 1 brand too. So now,
but as soon as somebody won the title, that ship sailed, and all of a sudden things changed again. And all it had to do, I mean, this is the even bigger thing for me. And like Rock and Cena, to a small degree, they line up. I mean, for a very brief amount of time. But Austin and Hogan have a definitive time where they cross paths, and we can look at who people preferred. Like that's my number 1 thing about it.
Yeah, agreed.
Fine, it's not Hogan in his prime. I get it.
Yeah, it wasn't Hogan in his prime. It was heel Hogan. It was people were starting to get tired of Hogan. I mean, and it's the same thing. I mean, for guys like Austin and The Rock, I think that their positives in the wrestling business was that they never overstayed their welcome. Unfortunately, Austin got hurt. Rock went and started, becoming a movie star. Hogan overstayed his welcome, absolutely, 100%. Can you even say the same about Flair and Cena? To a point, yes. I don't think that if Flair had the same impact, him overstaying his welcome as bad as it was on Hogan and Cena. So I feel like Flair had always been good enough with being a number 2 at times to people. He was okay that when Hogan came to WCW, he can be a number 2. Cena was never a number 2. Hogan was never a number 2. Flair played that utility role and did whatever was best for business. I think that's why he never really got hurt. People were tired of seeing. I mean, at the end of his WWE run, people were tired of seeing Hogan at the top. Even in his WCW run, people were tired of seeing him at the top until he turned heel.
Yeah, I mean, I think Flair works. I think Flair is more a contender in an old school metric. Like if you just looked at packed houses, just doing house shows, nothing else.
Run the loops.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think Flair all of a sudden, might even come out on top in that case. But as soon as you start adding other things, and I'm not trying to say he wasn't a draw for TV too, because he was. I'm not.
Of course he was.
I'm just trying to say he's not the number 1 in that regard. But if it was just old school metrics only, I think Flair has a big possibility number 1.
I agree.
And the other problem I have with Flair is that while he has some amazing attendance numbers, he also has some really bad ones too.
Yeah, but it's also, I think that was also indicative on the business at that time, and it was also, that was when WWE really started kicking up steam, and everybody was like, "Oh, do you watch wrestling? Oh yeah, the WWF is so great."
Right.
No, I'm an NWA fan. What's an NWA? You know what I mean? I think that's Flair kind of unfortunately got saddled with being the king of the number 2.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same thing as being the best quarterback for the New York Jets. You could be the greatest quarterback in the history of the New York Jets franchise. It's not going to be as big as the quarterback for the New York Giants. It's just the way it is. And I'm a Jets fan.
I was going to say, you just had to do it, didn't you?
Yeah, I'm a Jets fan. I'll put my own team down. But I mean, it is what it is. It's the same thing you can talk about. When you talk about sports, it's the same thing as Yankees and Mets. The Yankees are always just going to be that bigger team out of New York than the Mets are, and it was the same thing with wrestling.
Yeah, but like your argument was saying, Hogan made the number 2 the number 1, and so I think that counts.
Right, and that was Hogan. That was Hogan being Hulk Hogan. You know,
Right.
I mean, nobody ever thought. Everybody thought Hogan was going to retire. He was going to sit back. He was going to do Thunder in Paradise, and that was going to be the end of his wrestling run.
But this does bring me. This brings up another thing that people do get to debate on this one: T-shirt sales.
Okay,
But let's get this out the way right now. NWO shirts. Do they count as Hogan shirts or do they not count as Hogan shirts? Because this is the thing we have to get out of the way.
I can't see how they don't, because without all right, so the inaugural NWO T-shirt was like the only NWO T-shirt forever.
Yeah.
And then they started coming out with an NWO shirt with Hogan with his little band, with his little things on, playing the guitar on the NWO title, and and with an NWO logo on it. I mean, maybe you can take. It's hard to do. Like,
Right.
I almost want to say take a part of it, because if
Yeah,
not for
that's what I
Hogan,
would
Nash,
say.
and Hall,
Yes.
there would be no NWO. And but by that same point,
But you can't necessarily split it evenly. I understand that if you just split into threes, that might not exactly best reflect why people bought those shirts.
right? I mean, people
So I
might have
will give you
been
that.
Six and Buff Bagwell and Conan fans.
Yeah. But so like, and that's the thing about the NWO.
I'm sorry.
I just got.
That's why That's why people are buying those shirts, guys. Six,
Might
Buff
be.
Bagwell. Those are the guys. Conan. That's why NWO was big.
I mean, if you market this, marketing. If you market this right, the guy who taught Brett the sharpshooter.
right.
If you build these guys the correct way, then
The biggest upset in wrestling history.
then all of a sudden, just leave certain parts of the equation out, and all of a sudden maybe you could.
Former male porn star. I don't know what to say positively
I thought
for
he
Buff
was.
Bagwell.
I like Buff. That's the thing.
I never
Buff fan.
disliked Buff Bagwell. I just never liked Buff Bagwell.
No, I was a big Buff fan.
fair enough.
I thought he was. I liked the Blockbuster a lot. We'll start there.
Look, I've admitted on this show that I was a Lex Luger fan. I mean, there's no shame in anything.
No, but you see, you was. I still think Buff Bagwell is a solid worker. I still like Buff.
Ooh.
I like
All
the
right.
Blockbuster.
No, I give you the Blockbuster. That was probably at that time one of the coolest finishes of all time. I mean, of that period.
I liked his feud with DDP. I mean, we're going off the rails here, but I'm just saying. But I liked his feud with
all
DDP.
right. Okay.
What, you didn't like that feud?
Wasn't the big? I didn't care.
Okay.
I mean, if you want to talk about big DDP feuds, I'm going to sit here and talk about his feuds with Randy Savage and Goldberg. I'm not going to sit there and talk about the Buff Bagwell.
I praised his
feud.
feud. Oh, I'm not saying it's better, but okay, we'll get. This is probably another debate. All right, but-
Buff Bagwell's greatest feuds. Yeah. This is gonna be a good one. Be a really short show though.
Because I want to get into the whole thing now.
Oh man, I just totally destroyed the show.
No,
It's like I do this all the time.
it's fine. It's fine for me. But anyway, so yeah, let's get back on focus.
Okay.
So back on target. So
There we go.
yeah, the thing about the NWO shirts, and this is the part that people can debate, is how much of the percentage of the NWO shirts do you designate to Hogan? Do you split it just three ways, Hogan, Hall, and Nash? Do you divvy it up equally, or do you realize that maybe Hogan had more or less of an impact on those shirt sales? And then how do you put it into the equation?
Right.
Because
I mean, and it's really hard to debate on that too, because we don't know.
we don't know have the hard numbers.
Right, and also by that same point, we also don't know how well NWO shirts would have sold if Hogan being the third man didn't happen until after the NWO shirt came out.
Right.
We don't know how well those shirts would have continued to sell if, let's say, in a 4 or 5 month run, they decided to turn Hogan back into a babyface and keep the NWO going under the guise of somebody else. Maybe let's just say a Sting or a Savage. So it's hard to figure out, were people buying the NWO shirts just for Hogan? Probably not.
No,
But-
but without
but-
the NWO shirts, the T-shirt sales is not even a contest.
Oh, absolutely.
That's the
I
thing.
completely agree. But I mean, again, even in Justice for Inflation, absolutely, there's no shot. But it's also, I mean, there was one red and yellow Hulkamania shirt.
Yeah,
So,
it did okay, but it's just not even in comparison to just the Austin 316
right,
shirt. By
just the
itself.
Austin 316 shirt itself. Plus, I had the Other Side Jackass shirt, which I thought was so great, with the smoking skull on the back. There was the one where
I had the, Stone Cold University class.
Yes, the
316.
SCU.
I still have that.
there was the one we had he was in the sharpshooter, the blood pouring out of his face. There was that one too. He had a lot of great shirts.
So yeah, I'm just saying, when it comes to T-shirt sales, if we don't count NWO shirts, Hogan doesn't have a chance in comparison.
Oh, I completely agree. But also, I don't think wearing wrestling T-shirts was as prevalent back in the 80s as it was in the 90s. It's hard.
Yeah, all right,
these are the hard things to compare because I was born in '85. I was a wrestling fan from when I was 3 years old. I still remember sneaking out of my room to watch Hogan body slam Andre the Giant. I snuck out, and I remember my father and my sister were watching it, and I snuck out because I wanted to see the main event. So for me, I remember that time period, and I have a good grasp on that time period because my father also videotaped everything.
Nice.
So I have like a collection from 85 on of tapes that I watched over and over again. So I guess maybe there's a lot about that era that me and you probably can sit there and talk about more than a lot of other people who were just big fans during the Attitude Era. And the Attitude Era might have been that place where those guys became fans. I mean, and I can't also take away the fact of, to argue your point more than mine a little bit, I can't take away the fact that people may not have been WWE fans if there was no Stone Cold Steve Austin. I mean, sure, Rock was huge and Triple H and DX and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, everything was all great during the Attitude Era. There's no Attitude Era without Stone Cold.
Yeah, and that's something I cannot bring up more often enough because I love how I had a whole week diatribe set up for the Screwjob apologist, and it turns out I didn't need it. I'm not going to get into that, but I did that in a previous show where I was ready to tell everyone I had a 16-minute video on why the Screwjob was bad. Was the Screwjob another video on why the Screwjob could have been a work? I did a live stream on November 9th. I wanted to do it from Montreal, but I wound up not doing it. But I was ready because my last Screwjob video, everyone attacked me for it. Or not everyone, but a bunch of people. So I was ready. And then no one said anything. I was like, okay, everyone gets it. Anyway.
Attacked you for it in what way?
Just saying that the Screwjob birthed the Attitude Era. I'm like, no, it didn't.
No, it did not. No, it did not. No, it did not. No, I'm sorry. Stop.
I know.
No. Anybody who thinks that way, I don't know what's going on in your mind. I'm sorry. Now I'm going to get on my soapbox a little bit here. The Screwjob, did it birth the Attitude Era? Absolutely not. Was the Attitude Era slightly a byproduct of Vince McMahon understanding that after he screwed his top talent, and he only had Shawn Michaels at that point as being really the top guy at the point, that was it. It was just Shawn, and he knew he had to make a new character, and he realized what he had with Stone Cold. That's what birthed the Attitude Era. Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Vince McMahon. Stone Cold, all right, my birth of the Attitude Era moment, more than anything else, is Stone Cold stunning Vince McMahon for the very first time.
September 1997.
There you go. That is, to me, that was the birth of the Attitude Era. Definitely not the Montreal Screwjob. That had nothing to do with Vince McMahon deciding that he wanted to make his programming edgier.
Now, to tie it back into the topic, see, my birth of the Attitude Era, I say the King of the Ring 1996 coronation speech.
Okay, I can take that too.
Which birthed the T-shirt. Which brings me back to this.
There you go.
And see, so when I look at the T-shirt sales, it goes to Austin. When I go to just the hard numbers, regardless of any other factors, it still goes to Austin. And now I know this is another dicey area, but the fact that WWE is really not focusing on Hulk Hogan anymore, but they still allow Austin sales. They're still pitching Austin merchandise. Austin is continuing to grow where Hogan is not. I mean, I understand that's not Hogan's fault.
No, it's not.
I'm just saying.
I'll give you that. Not to argue again. I got to defend Hogan in this spot, but this isn't anything Hogan did by himself. WWE would still be featuring Hulk Hogan in the opening intro and in the opening for the network, and they would still have Hulkamania's Running Wild T-shirts on the WWE shop if this whole thing didn't happen with Hogan being apparently a racist and then banging his best friend on his best friend's wife on TV, on a video camera. These things are the things that negatively affected Hogan. It had nothing to do with Hulk Hogan, the wrestler, the Hulk Hogan in the business.
And I just realized I said it's not his fault they're pulling his merch, but I guess maybe it is.
Oh, it's 100% his fault.
So maybe I worded that the wrong way.
It's 100% his fault. But I guess to defend what you're saying, it's not. I'm just saying it wasn't. If Austin would have done the same thing would have happened to Austin.
But I'm just saying Austin's sales are continuing to grow where Hogan's is not.
I agree.
Regardless of whatever there is, there's still that factor is the fact that Austin is still making money.
I don't know. Is TNA still selling Immortal T-shirts?
It's a good question. But he's still making money in a higher capacity in WWE than Hogan is. Because I checked,
I agree.
So
I agree with that.
I just look at these factors and the fact that they went head to head. Austin pulled out the win in the end. higher ratings.
Right, but I
Just
mean,
off of ratings alone, which is not a factor of inflation.
Fair
Austin
enough,
has
but I
them
mean,
up.
that's also to defend Hogan. That wasn't Hogan's fault. That was WCW going off the rails and trying to do too many different things. Vince Russo coming in, trying to, take over a company that was already a stinking ship and thinking he can save it, screwing over Hogan in the process. I mean, there's a lot of factors there too.
And my other factor, and the other thing I would like to bring up is when you talked about how without Hogan there is no Austin in the Attitude Era, but going forward, then when we talk about John Cena and the ratings going down, well, just because somebody opens the doorway for you doesn't necessarily mean you take the ball and you run with it. Because Cena had even more opportunity than Austin did. It was even more of a global company by the time Cena got there than when it was Austin, but yet the ratings still lowered. And Austin on the other, so Austin, yeah, fine. Hogan, expanded the company, but that doesn't always mean anything.
Right, but also, in defense of John Cena,
Uh-huh.
wow. I feel like I like Austin more than everybody we're talking about. In defense of John Cena,
Do ya?
I do. You know it. In defense of John Cena, that also wasn't John Cena's fault either. The WWE pushed back on being a show that was going to be more edgy and hip and cool, and pulled back to being a family programming with Cena as the forefront of that. So, I mean, it's not 100% Cena's fault that those ratings went down. They were going to lose those ratings, whether it was Cena at the top, Orton at the top, Triple H still stay at the top, Kurt Angle, whoever you wanted it to be.
I just look at it that I think the biggest thing for Cena is, during his era, is the rule for me is, now fine, you don't have to do this the whole year, but the guy who is the most over, you give him that belt. You don't try to manufacture the guy to be the most over. Cena, Roman Reigns, which is why I don't think Hulk Hogan was manufactured. Yes, Vince McMahon helped, but I don't think you could do it with everyone, because they try to do it with everyone and it doesn't take. So that's my thing.
I can argue against the Cena thing. Cena was over as all hell when he beat JBL for the title.
Yes, but he was not over to the Hogan level that they try to make him be. Yes, he was. I'm not arguing.
Right.
I agree with you totally on that.
But the other thing is that wrestling fans also got smarter. The internet was around, and this is my biggest argument for the John Cena hate. It's the same argument I have for the Roman Reigns hate, that it was all Daniel Bryan's fault. Which it was. If Daniel Bryan if they wouldn't have eliminated Daniel Bryan from that Royal Rumble, if Daniel Bryan would have never been in that Royal Rumble, Reigns would not get as hated as he was. I'm telling you, Paul Heyman even said it. And if Paul Heyman says it, it's gospel.
He wouldn't be as hated, but his mic skills are a big problem.
Agreed. I'm not saying he doesn't.
That's why he
flaws.
could never be a Hogan, is just because he's not as charismatic.
Right. No, and I agree he does have his flaws. I completely admit that. But the Cena factor was that Cena wrestled in a time where everybody's heroes slowly started to leave the WWE, and he was beating them all on their way out. It was very hard to cheer for John Cena over Shawn Michaels, Triple H, Kurt Angle, Chris Jericho.
Kurt Angle, yeah.
I mean, those were the guys that Cena was beating at when he was starting off, and everybody was like, "Oh yeah, we like Cena, but we also like Kurt Angle, and and those guys, we like them more."
I think my thing about why Cena, and I've said this before, I think Cena gets a bad rap. I like Cena, but I think the problem with Cena is they didn't let him fly enough. They narrowed him down and controlled him too much.
Agreed. I mean, if they would have let Cena have the moveset that he had the entire time he wrestled, he would have been great.
I mean, well, and not only that, when he was heel, rapping, he was angry. He had something to say other than just, hustle, loyalty, and respect. It gets tired. Like, Cena's shtick just got old.
It did. The whole, after he would lose, he'd come out and be like, "Oh no, I completely respect the fact that I lost, but it's okay."
But back on...
And there we go.
But back on target. So I don't think you can manufacture everybody. So I think the guy himself matters. I know Vince doesn't think that, but I do.
I mean, yeah, I agree.
So when
look at CM Punk.
And right. And when I look at Austin is the biggest example of what would make the champion. He's got a good look to him. He's got the right size. He's not like a little guy.
Yeah.
He's got the great attitude. He's great on the mic. I think I've gotten flack for this, but I think he's better on the mic than The Rock.
I mean, that's debatable. I think The Rock was more entertaining. I think that Austin had a better wrestling promo than The Rock.
Right, that's my point. Rock told a lot of catchphrases. He was just like a catchphrase machine. He was funny. He was quippy. But Austin told a story. I believed Austin more.
Agreed.
Especially in the beginning.
Yeah.
If Austin seemed like he hated somebody, I really thought he hated him. I'm like, oh, this guy's screwed. Like, this guy better watch out.
Yeah, him and Owen Hart definitely, hated each other.
Yeah.
Well, him and Brett definitely hated each other.
Right. And a lot of ECW guys are like that, too.
Yeah.
Like, there was a lot of ECW guys that I believed, like Raven and all that. But
the Raven Dreamer, the Raven Sandman feuds, yeah, absolutely.
Right. So when you have a guy with Austin's level mic skills, he has the right look, he has the right charisma, he has all these factors way more than I think anybody else does. I think he had more than Hogan, more than a lot of other people. And I think he did more for the industry than... I know more than Hogan sounds rough, but I do think Austin did more for the industry.
It is rough. I just... My defense of Hogan is that... You say the right look and everything like that. That 1980s bleach blonde surfer, tan, big-bodied guy. That was the look for that time period.
I think he got lucky. I think the guy who has like the perfect 80s look is Sting. Like I think that's the guy.
Yeah.
If you're going
I can even say Savage too, but I mean I'll always argue Savage over everyone.
Savage is a little short.
A little bit, but I'll always argue Savage over everyone. He was better in the ring than everybody else too.
Oh no, Savage was really good in the ring too. And
on the mic too. But anyway, but my defense of Hogan in this.
Yeah, final thoughts because we got to wrap up.
Yeah,
so final thoughts.
So all right. So in defense of Hulk Hogan, the WWE wasn't a global brand at that time, and Hogan brought it to that level. I think that Hogan was just the right. He was lightning in a bottle, and they rode that for such a long time because they didn't have anybody who could even come anywhere close to taking the spot of Hulk Hogan. And you can see that after Hogan left, they suffered. The ratings really dipped hard. They dipped harder than they did now after Austin left because they had people to carry the WWE after that. And maybe that's because they knew how to manufacture stars better. They know how to feature people better. There were better people out there to do that with. But I think Hogan, all right, my final thought, if you go up to anybody and say, who is the first person that comes to your mind when you say the words professional wrestler, I think you're going to hear Hulk Hogan's name more than everybody else.
That's fair. Okay. Now, my final thought is I'm going to talk about when we look at the global expansion of the company and how much it's blossomed and how much the ratings dipped, you have to look at the fact that Austin did spread out even more. So, sure, Hogan got the ball rolling, but, you can also make the argument for Andre the Giant, Bruno Sammartino. These guys made the company global, too.
Agreed.
So, they're also Hogan's also dependent on them. And when we look at the ratings dip, the difference was when Hogan left WWF, there was a major level of competition. TNA, I'm sorry, it's not really a threat.
Agreed. You're right.
And they didn't form till 2002, the same year that Austin left.
It's fair.
So there was really so they didn't dip that hard, but people didn't have much of an alternative.
That's fair.
And also, when I just look at the hard numbers, when I just look at the T-shirt sales, when I look at a lot of the other things, and pay-per-view buy rates, if I'm also remembering correctly, he is higher than Hogan. When I look at that and the ticket sales, and we look at a lot of other experts will tell you it's Stone Cold Steve Austin, and that's who I say. But what do you guys think? Who do you think is the biggest money draw in wrestling history? Is it Austin? Is it Hogan? Is it somebody else? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to tell everyone where they can find more of you.
Hey, if you guys want to, take a listen to the stuff that I do, it's facebook.com/the Slam Sessions Podcast Network. Take a listen to all the stuff that I do, and also, you can find everything there. I'm not gonna go crazy. If you want to know, you'll find out.
All right. Well, this has been the Dave Knows Wrestling Podcast. I am David Lee, and
I'm Albert Albanese.
And we'll see you next time. And as always, Dave knows.